Hello and welcome back to Making It. My name is Mirabelle, and today on the podcast we have Cody Warner. Cody is a filmmaker, YouTuber who started out doing daily vlogs, and now he creates a lot of motivational videos, but it's probably not the type that you're thinking of, where it's like super upbeat, fast music, and they're like, yeah, get up early, work out 24/7, and you'll become successful. Like, that's not exactly it, although he does do cold plunges, and we do talk about that a little. So he is such a naturally energetic person with it's clear to see that he has a strong persistence and strong passion for creating and all things creativity. So it was a really fun chat. In his videos, he often gives tips for freelancer creators, sometimes with a focus on ADHD, which we also talk about. It was interesting to hear more about how he's learned to work with his ADHD and shedding light on some common misconceptions. He also does some tech reviews and tutorials. So whenever I need a boost of inspiration to get creating, need some motivation to get productive, I will often watch his videos. And they're not long either. A lot of them are maybe 2 to 5 minutes, all about tips and tricks or just vlog style where he's showing you what he's up to, and that gets me excited. So of course we talk about how he turned posting YouTube videos into a career, as well as his philosophy behind the Facebook group that he created called nosmallcreator. There's a lot packed into this episode. ADHD, YouTube, pickleball, cold plunges, so much. I'd love to know if you're a creator, what do you make or what do you do? Do you have ADHD? And if you're not a creator, I think we all are. I think hashtag #nosmallcreator could also be hashtag everyone's a creator. But I would love to know your takeaways from this episode. Feel free to leave a comment on the YouTube channel if that's where you're watching, or on Instagram. I will be posting daily clips. Rate and review the podcast if you haven't already, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the podcast, Cody.
Thank you very much.
So you are among many of the YouTubers that I've followed for camera stuff and stuff. But how did you get started? Let's kind of start there.
Yeah. So my first videos on YouTube were actually back in college. Like, I used it as like an archival place to put videos before I understood any of the power of like evergreen YouTube. And it's crazy because some of those videos, even though they're like literally stupid college kid videos, have like thousands of views. And it like, I should have seen the power of it back then with that, but I didn't. In 2018, I started a daily vlog. The daily vlog was kind of, running a small business day in, day out, what it feels like to run a small business, but in the video production space. So that's kind of where like the camera, freelancer sort of thing came from, that side of it. But it was a daily vlog where I would just talk about, anything that was on my mind in that day, and working out and doing hard stuff. But the idea was just to, encourage other people who are running small businesses to keep going. And that started in 2018, transitioned more to kind of like the camera editing, creator focused videos at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, when I stopped the daily vlog in 2019. So I only did that for a year. It was I loved it. It was absolutely glorious, but it was also incredibly grueling, and so, it was bittersweet to stop it. But transitioned to that kind of more creator space in 2019, and then kept sort of pretty much along that path, still kind of like veering off course out of that niche, pretty often actually, just because like that's kind of my personality. But yeah, pretty along those lines.
Yeah, it seems like I've noticed like a shift into a lot of mental health talk nowadays on your channel, or productivity and stuff.
Yeah,
it's very fun.
yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, I know that's not what's best for the channel, but I'm just really into, like, personally, that stuff, So it's one of those things where it's like, maybe we can just make this work. But I will say, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, like just when it comes to YouTube advice. I don't get much requests for like YouTube advice anymore. I don't really make videos about YouTube as much anymore, though I have concepts that like I might make, so you might see that. I'm probably gonna have to eat my words, but I really don't think that you can like kill a channel by going way off topic and then trying to come back. And the reason I say that is like that's definitely not the best way or the fastest or most efficient way to grow a channel, but I have veered way off of that, the course, way off of the path, and then made videos that are on the path. And yeah, they might not get traction right away, but eventually they do. And those evergreen views start to come back to those new videos. So it's like, it's an interesting thing, but yeah, productivity, mental health, kind of like, it's interesting because that's sort of like the topic of my daily vlog. It's almost like back to my roots is like, how do we do this as small business owners? So it makes sense, but it's also not the perfect thing for the YouTube algo, I don't think.
Oh, yeah. But also the algorithm changes so much and trends change too. So like if you're always trying to chase a trend, it's probably going to change by the time you're caught up to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's complicated. It's weird.
Yeah.
Back to daily vlogging. If I remember correctly, that was not like you weren't natural at it. Were you? Or were you just like you picked up a camera, you were comfortable with it? It took some time, maybe.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I always say it took me 114 days until I made my first vlog where I was like, yeah, like that came across the way that I wanted it to come across. I presented myself in a way that feels natural to how I perceive myself. So, when you watch some of my first vlogs, like I am just dead staring into the camera without blinking for minutes on end. It's very uncomfortable for me to watch some of those. And I still do crazy, weird, uncomfortable stuff. And I think that's part of the beauty of it, of YouTube, is like you're growing and learning, but also you're just kind of like becoming comfortable with your own awkwardness and weirdness and like accepting some of that stuff. And so I wouldn't call myself a natural, but I think I was a natural at liking the punishment of it in a way, like, liking kind of the day in and day out, like, oh, I don't really like this, publish anyway. Oh, this isn't quite right, publish anyway. I think that there's a piece of that that's crucial.
What kept you going? Why did you push through and make these vlogs? What was the purpose of it?
Yeah, I really it started out as like a challenge to myself to just be like, this is a hard thing and I want to do it and I think I would be good at it. And, can I, almost like a question to myself, like, can I do it? But as it started going, I would say even like, once I got past 2 weeks, 14 days, I was like starting to really become quote unquote addicted to the process and the system of it, of just like coming up with a creative idea in the morning, trying to capture that idea throughout the day, editing that idea the next morning very early, and then having to do the whole thing over again. It really got me into a very, very kind of creative and productive zone that like I really loved, So it started as just a challenge to myself, but I think it evolved into something that was just like super fulfilling, and I liked the feeling of creating and making so much stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because with this podcast, I wanted to talk to other creatives about, whatever we're thinking, what we're going through and all of that. And share our woes and everything, or our highs and what we've learned. Because I don't have that many friends around me in real life that are doing the same thing. So I really crave that conversation. And so I started the podcast. And I want to say the first season, at least the first couple episodes, I cringe a little bit as I listen back to it. But like, you got to start somewhere, right?
Right.
And eventually get a little bit more comfortable.
Right. And I think like that's so true in across all industries, you know, of like Ira Glass has this like awesome 5-minute rant that's called The Gap. I forget like what podcast or whatever he was on when he talked about it, but just this idea that like, you know, it's actually a good thing that you see something that you made and you know that it's not quite meeting the mark, but like you're not quite sure how to make it meet the mark, but you're, you know, gonna persist and keep going. Like that's just all that is just good taste, you know? You have a good enough taste to know what it is that you desire to make, and then the discipline to kind of pursue it. So yeah, I think that's across any industry. Anybody who's pursuing something that's a little hard, you know, that's how we all start. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. You are really somebody who you kind of seem to torture yourself a little bit, but for good reasons, I suppose. You've been talking a lot about cold plunges.
Yeah.
And how do you just push through and, you know, even though you dread it every time, how do you...
I mean, it's like anything that is worthwhile in life, right? It's like back in the daily vlog days, it was the cold plunge substitute was working out daily over lunch. I had a membership over at the Y, and you know, the refrain that would go on in my head, like I hate cardio, I don't like jogging, I just don't like long distance stuff. I like little sprints, right? Little pushes of energy and then getting to relax. So whenever I have to jog for like, you know, even 2 miles, that just feels very torturous to me. But the refrain that would go on in my head is, this is hard and I'm doing it. Like for me, as someone with ADHD, we are very opposed to doing hard things. We are very opposed to the feeling of discomfort, right? Like, yes, there is seek discomfort. It's this idea that like, if I could just feel good all the time, wouldn't that be wonderful? But that is actually this huge myth, because A, you wouldn't feel wonderful, you know, because that's not how the chemicals in our brain work. But B, that's just not the reality of life. Life is a roller coaster. There's ups and downs, and there's hard stuff to do constantly, especially for kind of driven people who are trying to build something or create something. There's going to be all these challenges. So for me, cold plunging is a daily commitment to, I just woke up, I'm like groggy. You know, when you get out of bed, you're warm in bed, so then you feel very cold because your body temperature is super high. Like the last thing you want to do is dunk yourself in a, you know, 30 to 40 to 50 even degree water. And so the daily commitment to be like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it because in my life, I am making the commitment to do hard things, even though they're hard, even though I don't want to do them. It's a really good kind of morning ritual, I guess, for me. And that's why I've stuck with it.
I took a cold shower in honor of this conversation today.
Let's go. Yeah, how'd it feel? Terrible?
Yeah.
Good.
Well, I only did like the latter half of my shower. Before I got out, I turned the water cold.
That's the way to do it. I love it.
Thing.
I love it.
Yeah. It does feel good after, though. It's just not quite in the moment, you know?
Yep.
So with vlogging, you're vlogging about small businesses. That was your own small business that you're vlogging about?
Yep.
This is like...
Yep, that's what it was. Production. So it was a video production company. I ended up selling it to my business partners at the end of 2018, but video production company were making like commercial videos, and there were some cameos from other small business owners, I'd say, like throughout 2018, and I still love stuff like that. Like any chance I get to meet with other people or small business owners or creators, that sort of stuff. I love kind of highlighting other people doing cool stuff. But yeah, my small business, and I'm still a small business owner. It's just a different small business now.
Yeah. You've been doing a lot of like, I guess, small business with other people and yourself and YouTube consulting, right? Working with other media companies. Yeah.
So in, beginning of 2022, so almost a year ago now, maybe it was May, either April or May, I started working with a company that was doing YouTube consulting, and I stopped working with them. That was like an employee. I was an employee of that company. So that was my first technical employment in, I think 7 years or something like that. I'm not sure what the math was, but I was a W-2 employee, and did that for 7 or 8 months. But I stopped in December of 2022. So I went back to just kind of like full-time freelance creative. I don't get me wrong. I love helping people. I loved helping people try to build YouTube channels and come up with cool ideas and cool thumbnails and all the stuff that I was doing there. But something I found out about myself throughout that experience was I must be making videos, or things like, but videos are kind of what I go to, right? So I must be making videos, and I just wasn't. I didn't have the time or effort or energy left after helping other people do it to be able to do it myself, and just like schedule wise, it wasn't working. So, I found that out about myself, and that's like very grateful to have. It's interesting because I knew that, but I sort of thought maybe this will be okay, like, because I'm helping other people do it. But I really almost require the creative, expressive outlet of making videos that are my own.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you'd never have known that if you didn't try, if you didn't actually go work for them, right?
Right.
Or work with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You have a lot of videos about freelancer things, like stuff that freelancers should focus on, or things that people should pay attention to as an independent business owner and such. When you're working with this company, were you coming up with more ideas, more things like that to put into your own videos?
Yeah. I stayed a freelancer throughout that experience, though I was doing much less freelance work, but I kept a couple of sponsorships for my own YouTube channel, and then, making videos, that was totally fine. It's just, I didn't have time to do it. But yeah, I mean, I think also, so in that whole time, all the freelancer content really came from just like thinking about what it takes to be financially sound as a freelancer, and then trying to make sure that video freelancers who are on that path, like, are thinking about that stuff. Because I just, like, as a freelancer, you can just get so wrapped up in the short term, in like the now money of like, I just need to make money right now to pay the bills, which you do. You totally do. It's so easy to get kind of blindsided month after month by that, and never really take the time to focus on the bigger picture and kind of what it looks like to become financially independent and like time independent. And I care so much about that stuff for myself that it just makes me very passionate about sharing that stuff with other people. So yeah, I'd say that that's probably the biggest focus of my channel right now. And I hope to at least keep that a part of the focus of the channel, because I just think it's so crucial.
It is super helpful, all the stuff that you talk about, because it's not like you can go to school and learn how to be a freelancer,
right? Yeah.
And this kind of creative field that we're in is also not something that's traditionally taught. It's not a very linear path that people can take, or that people know about. So yeah, it's very helpful.
No, I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, I mean, when I was in high school and people were saying like, "Hey, what are you thinking about doing?" Like, there was no such thing as a full-time YouTuber, as a creator. Like that didn't exist, So in a lot of ways, we are really kind of forging the path. And it's new and different, almost like, month in and month out, of what the path's going to look like. So, just trying to like help as much as I can.
And you have, is it just a Facebook group? nosmallcreator?
Yeah, there's a Discord as well, but the Discord is pretty dormant. But yeah, Facebook group of people who are building, mostly people who are building YouTube channels or at least dabbling in YouTube channels.
Yeah. What's the philosophy or like the whole meaning behind No Small Creator?
Yeah. No Small Creator is just the mindset that, if you have an idea and you take it from inside of your head and put it out into the world, that process, for anyone who's ever gone through that process, it is a massive process full of numerous different facets and challenges and obstacles and the whole self-defeating thing and imposter syndrome and all of the stuff that goes into it. So, on YouTube, there's everyone likes to categorize everything everywhere in the whole world. People love categories. Yep. So there's big creators and then there's small creators. And that's just sort of a way that people talk. So the movement or the mindset is, you can call somebody a small creator, but you gotta know there's no such thing as a small creator. So that's where the No Small Creator kind of rallying cry came from. And a lot of people really resonated with it. And I'm glad that they did.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting that when you are a creator, you're making something that hasn't existed before. That's such a wild concept.
It's beautiful. I mean, it gives me, you gave me goosebumps when you just said that, even though I think about this stuff all the time. But
yeah,
yes, it is insanely, it's the creation of something that didn't exist and wouldn't exist without the effort that you put in to make it exist. So yeah, it's huge.
Huge creator.
Mm-hmm.
So with how we were saying YouTube didn't exist 10 years ago and such, Fong had a question that was, how different is communication today compared to communication 10 years ago? Would you like to change anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because mass communication kind of through YouTube or through podcasting or even through Instagram, video, audio, whatever, digital communication is in a lot of ways just amplified interpersonal communication,
True.
But it's also completely different. And it also feels completely different to the communicator. And there's almost a different understanding of how to communicate with a mass audience, right? Or multiple people, one to many, as they say. But it's so funny because so much of, at least on YouTube, so much of it, the key is to still talk to the camera and still communicate in your videos as though you are communicating to just that one person. Because, even though it's mass communication, it's not like there's these auditoriums of people gathering to watch my videos. There's one person on their phone watching one of my videos. So as much as I can make kind of a one-to-one communication happen, if that's possible, which I think some creators are better at doing it than others, that's really what the target is. But yeah, I mean, I think they're in many ways they're very similar, and I try to ground myself there and not overcomplicate it often, actually, because it can start to feel very weird. Even when you get 100 views or 100 downloads on something, that's 100 people. When I used to give presentations in class, I would be sweating and terrified in front of 18 people. So it's 100 people are listening to this. That's crazy. And then some of the videos pop off and get 50,000 views, and you're like, wait, 50,000 people? So it can get really terrifying. So it's really good to kind of ground myself anyway but really it's just me talking to this one person who's watching this on the phone, and how can I positively affect that just one person and not kind of worry about all of the other differences there are. Because
it's so hard to imagine 5,000, however many thousands of people watching your videos. Do you try to envision that? Because I've looked up pictures of a stadium of like 4,000 people because I had some front page opportunities on Twitch. So my live stream I had 4,000 concurrent viewers at one time, which is super cool.
Yeah.
But also, as you were saying, it's super weird because you don't see them. You don't see their faces. You see the couple of people who are actively chatting, but also that's still just usernames, right? So like I did go search up a picture of what 4,000 people might look like, just to give myself a little bit more of it, conceptualize it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I wonder. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that too. I've looked at those pictures, or like, I tried to look up like what 100,000 people would look like in a stadium one time. And even that, like, it starts to get, the dots are so little now that it's like you're kind of losing the scope of what it is. But I've looked up that stuff, and I really like, I've seen Tony Robbins you know who else does it is Chris Do, has like all of these, whenever they do lives, like they have all of these video squares that showed at least some of the members of the audience, the viewers. But even it's like less than 50 boxes,
Yeah.
But it looks like this massive amount of people. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think for live, it makes a little bit more sense to try to envision what that's like. But I do think there's still this kind of, if you can talk one-to-one, you might have a chance to really resonate with that one person who's viewing it.
I really like that. I think that when you are focused on trying to get your message across to at least one person, impact one person, it does send ripples out. It does affect more and more people, I think.
Yeah. I totally agree.
It is more genuine.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's very much appreciated. With you mentioned your ADHD, and DJ had a question about that. He said, when did you find out about your ADHD, and how did your family and friends react regarding that? Was it positive, helpful, neutral, indifferent, or unhelpful, or rejection?
Yeah, it's a little bit of all of that stuff. But yeah, when I found out about it, so I had a creeping suspicion that I had ADHD, like since I was in maybe 10th or 11th grade, just because I saw that like I handled schoolwork much differently than all of my friends. I didn't, there was stuff that I was really good at and could just do naturally because I was just naturally attracted to it. And there was other stuff that like I just couldn't do, like homework. I just couldn't get myself to do homework. And so I had this suspicion, but it wasn't negatively affecting my life at that time. Like I was getting passing grades and, for all intents and purposes, like thriving in high school and then also all through college. It never kind of, the more negative components of ADHD didn't really pop up. But it was when I got my first job and then shortly thereafter started my business, where like I had to do the mundane, boring aspects of business building or doing a job. I had to do them. There was nobody else who could do those things because I didn't have enough money to hire anybody. And so I really started to get into like a spiral of being really late on stuff and then not being able to do it and then being even later on that stuff and then like getting down on myself for not doing it and like just one of those spirals. So that's when I sought diagnosis, where I was like, okay, I've known that this has been a part of me. It never really negatively affected me until now. This is when I was like, I think 26, maybe 26, 27 years old. So this is 10 years ago now. So I went to a doctor. I was like, I think I might have ADHD. Can you test me for it? They're like, you definitely have ADHD. I was like, I thought maybe that was the case. And they also actually diagnosed me with with minor depression at that time. And so I tried some drugs, they didn't work great, tried some other drugs, they didn't work great. The doctor really wanted to try me on this other drug, but I didn't have insurance. So it would have been like $470 a month or something to do this one drugs that he wanted me to try. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. He's like, but it's a really good drug, So I've actually still never tried that drug, but ended up getting off the drugs after, I think it was like 4 months, just like decided the drugs aren't really great for me. But, throughout that whole time, started sharing with my friends and family. And, most of them, I would say 99% of them were supportive and like, oh, wow, I wouldn't have really thought of that, but it makes sense. It's cool that you're kind of seeking, answers and the way to make it work best for you, kind of. But yeah, there were some who just sort of were like, well, I don't really think that that's a thing. Almost like, I don't think that that's a thing. I think that,
right.
Almost telling me like, that sounds more like an excuse, or are you sure, in a respectful way, but like questioning whether or not ADHD was something that I had or was affecting me. And so that was hurtful. But at that time, that was really something we all have to do as adults, is like decide who are we going to let affect our internal state of mind and peace of mind, state of being, right? If we let every single person in our periphery, especially when you go digital, when you go mass communication, you start, getting thousands and thousands of views. If we let all of them and those negative comments and whatever affect us, like, that is no way to live life. So basically at that time, my circle just started getting smaller and smaller of who I was going to actually let their opinion affect who I was and how I thought about myself and how I operate, right? So I'd say even that, I'm an eternal optimist. So like, that was the silver lining there. Even though that didn't feel great, the silver lining was it helped me to start reining in who I was going to allow to affect me, and that ended up being super beneficial for starting YouTube and getting people who are crazy, who were talking, who were saying mean stuff on the internet. So, yeah, that was kind of how my family took it. But yeah, it was 10 years ago now that I got diagnosed with ADHD.
Wow. DJ had another question about that. It was, what helped you the most at the beginning of learning to live with ADHD?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say at the beginning and then still now. And this has been like a learning, growing process. ADHD Twitter has actually been extremely helpful. I didn't find that until maybe 2 years ago, but extremely helpful just because, like, to know that you're not alone and to be a part of a community who has like so many of the same thoughts that you do. It's so crazy when someone from ADHD Twitter tweets out some random thing. I'm like, I've thought that literal exact thing for my whole life, or, whatever. But yeah, the biggest thing is the understanding that, and this isn't actually, I'll say it this way, like, ADHD is a spectrum disorder, like similar to autism, or some of the other spectrum disorders, where like it just isn't the same for every person, right? So, but the way that I experience ADHD, the thing that was most helpful for me was realizing, in some ways, it is a disorder, yes, but in other ways, it's not so much me or the way my brain works that is disordered. It's actually the culture that I live in and the things that the culture that I live in value. This culture values things that I do not value. And if I lived in a different culture, a hypothetical culture that was built by people with ADHD, I would be completely normal. It wouldn't be weird for me to be late all the time, or to like not really have an understanding of time and how much time it's going to take to to do one thing, or so that's the easiest one to talk about, is just the lateness. But
I remember seeing a video or with Colin and Samir, where you guys were, you had to go and you just did not leave, and you were late for your next event.
Yeah,
it was a whole
right.
thing.
And it turns into this like domino effect of then how negatively that affects you, and then you end up just not sleeping because you have to edit a daily vlog that day. So it's like,
right.
Yeah, I don't know, just realizing that yes, there are aspects of me that I, wish I had better control over, or wish they make my life harder, right? But realizing that there's also an external component where like, just because I don't fit into the way the world works doesn't mean that I'm messed up. It means that I'm different. And if I can kind of create an environment and get around people who are willing to co-create that environment with me, neurotypical or neurodiverse or whatever, my life can be a lot easier, and I can actually thrive. I can actually do stuff that is extremely helpful and beneficial and like, moves the ball, right? So seeking out those opportunities and those communities of people who really like value what I have to bring to the table, I think that's super crucial for me.
But yeah, I mean, on a very, very, very different level scale, being left-handed is a bit of an issue sometimes.
Yeah.
Because the world is built for right-handed people. That's the majority, right? So scissors. Always in elementary school, everybody sharing scissors and everything. You got to run to go find the left-handed ones before anybody else takes it.
Right. That's a great kind of like metaphor for it, Yeah. Just little things that come naturally, like using scissors, doesn't come naturally to everybody. I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some common misconceptions about ADHD that some people have?
There's actually this really good Twitter thread the other day that was basically this question, and I resonated with so many of them. Like I was just retweeting like all of them. I'm like, oh no, everyone's gonna hate me. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is like, culturally, if you're friends with somebody, you're gonna remember to talk to them, right? You're gonna remember to reach out to them, whether you see them or not. But something that happens with ADHD often is called object impermanence, where if you don't see it, then you sort of forget it exists. But the interesting thing about us is like, it's not that we forget it exists, it's just we forget to tend to it. It's easiest to tend to the most urgent things that are right in front of us, right? So we tend to those things, and then just randomly, all of a sudden, on like some random Wednesday afternoon, we'll be like, oh my goodness, I haven't talked to this person that I love in 9 months. Like it just like randomly hits us, and the feeling of like guilt and like shame of like, what are they going to think? And they probably think I'm mad at them, when really like none of that is true. It just simply, our brains don't work in a way where like we remember stuff like that isn't right in front of us. That's one of them. Another misconception I think is because there are so many sort of relatable aspects of ADHD, like ADHD is very relatable, I think, to everybody who just lives in the world in 2023. It's like, yeah, it's hard to want to do boring things, but like, isn't that something that everybody deals with? And I heard it said really good the other day. It might have been ADHD Jesse on Twitter. He was like, the difference is you have a hard time doing stuff that you don't want to do. I have a hard time doing stuff that I want to do. It's like, I want to be on time. I want to do the dishes. I want to remember to pick up my kids from the bus stop. Like nobody would ever be like, yeah, I want to forget to pick up my kids from the bus stop. But if I'm responsible for picking up my kids, I'm setting an alarm, and then I'm going to set multiple reminders for that alarm. And then, maybe I'll also tell Alexa to remind me, 7 minutes before. And then even the 7 minute before, I'm going to set another one that's 2 minutes before I have to leave, because I will forget to do it, which is insane. So,
with the object impermanence, do you ever, when your kids go to school for the whole day and they're just gone, do you ever just forget that they exist for a bit?
I mean, no. My kids are kind of different in that, since I'm responsible for their well-being, they're sort of always in the back of my head. But yes, in a similar way to when you get in the zone and you're doing something, just anybody can experience kind of flow state and time sort of starts to disappear. But it's that kind of times some amount more a hyper-focused state where it's like I can look up and, oh my goodness, it's dark out, and forgot to, another big one is remembering to go to the bathroom. I can just get so in the zone on something that all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to go to the bathroom, or drink water or eat. These are all things that I want to do, but yeah, it can be easy to forget to do them because they're not front and center.
Yeah, I have a friend who talked a little bit about his ADHD with me, and because it's a fairly new thing that I think people are having more conversations around now. But so he was telling me about hyperfocus and everything as well, and my immediate thought was that kind of seems like a nice superpower, though. If you're hyper focused on something that you want to do, that you want to get done, and it's happening, you can spend so much time doing that one thing. And to me, I was like, wow, this sounds amazing.
Right. Yeah. And it really is, it's that double-edged sword, right? So that's how I've experienced hyper-focused in a lot of ways. But there are a lot of ADHD voices who say, don't ever call it a superpower because it ruined my life in XYZ way. And, the easiest way to think about that is when you're hyper-focused on the right thing, on a productive thing, that's awesome. But it doesn't always line up that way. You might get hyper-focused on a Netflix show, and then now you just watch that. You just binge 8 seasons of that instead of working, The other thing is it can create very unrealistic expectations internally. When I have a fantastic hyper-focus, kind of high dopamine day where everything is just clicking, I'm running on all cylinders, I am, just whatever. I can accomplish so much. I can do more than the average person can do, and effortlessly, effortlessly more. But then the next day, I'm just I'm just like a bump on a log, right? And that can create this insane feeling of kind of well, why am I not just better? Why I should be as good as my best day. And so there's this really hard internal regulation of what to even expect from myself. And that can be really disheartening, I think. So yeah, it's a crazy new thing.
Yeah, I find that I often give myself more tasks than I can handle in a day, or I just it just never feels like I'm doing enough. I'm maybe editing a podcast episode all day, and then I do a live stream they're 3 hours long, and then there's a lot that I do in a day. My friends ask me they've got their full-time 9-to-5 jobs, and so they're complaining about whatever from work, and then they ask what I'm up to, and I tell them about my day, what I was doing, and they're like, wow, that is so much. I'm like, is it though? I don't feel like it's enough.
Right.
But yeah.
The question of enough is a great question. I think that we as creators would do very well to continue having conversations about that question, because it is creating, like we talked about earlier, creating something from nothing is a massive feat. That's very, so like, how much do we require of ourselves? How much must we create in order to have created enough, right? I have no idea.
Sometimes it feels very satisfying when I write a song and then I'm like, okay, yeah, done. I'm great. I'm good. This one thing that I did today is enough. And I feel just very satisfied in that, because I guess it is just after creating something. But I suppose if it's more of the tedious admin work side, then it feels like I didn't do anything.
Right. And you have to remind yourself, like, but it was necessary. I did necessary stuff. Like, you feel like you wasted the whole day because you didn't end up making something. Yeah, I resonate with that deeply.
Yeah, I was just having this conversation with a friend yesterday. This question often comes up where we're like, what are we supposed to do when we're resting? You know, when we have a weekend to take off or something, when do we do that and how do we do that? Because I enjoy playing video games sometimes and I enjoy reading and whatnot, but I get bored so quickly. And I feel like I'm constantly wanting, I don't know, I guess to make something, being involved with anything creative. I was just reading The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, and that book got me inspired from that one day I was resting. And so I was like, so if I'm not creating, then I guess I have to be talking about creativity or reading about creativity, thinking about it. Yeah. What do you do when you have days for breaks and such?
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of physical activity. I'm a big, like, let's go on a hike or go swimming or sailing or play pickleball or work out. Like, I get a lot of recharge from the flow state that comes from that sort of stuff, physical activity and competitive stuff. Like, even last night we were playing field hockey as a family, like scrimmaging with my kids, like that, and time just flies, and that sort of flow state feeling. But yeah, I'm also a big sleeper. Like, I can just, if I have a day off, I'll be like, I might sleep for 3 hours today. I feel I'm probably still catching up on lack of sleep from 2018.
Oh man.
But sleeping, love to travel, like see cool things, take pictures of cool things. Like, I know that that's kind of starting to cheat now, but like, because it's photo instead of video, it feels freeing and relaxing and kind of like a hobby to take pictures. Yeah, I think it's very different for everybody, and I think those are great questions to ask, and like write lists and force yourself to rest and detach, and do stuff that like gets your brain kind of going in a different direction than your brain constantly has to go for work. Because I do think, like, I've seen it myself and other people, so many great creative ideas come from forcing your brain to stop thinking about the stuff that you're creating. So those are great questions. Yeah,
definitely. By gaining more life experience gives you more to pull from to create things, for sure.
Yep. And that's how our brains work, right? Like, creativity is like remix. So it's connecting, like traveling here, flying in an airplane here, seeing this site, meeting this person, and like now there's some new thing in our brain. So I totally agree.
I love that. You do a lot of traveling, right?
I did a lot more before COVID. I haven't quite as much after, but still probably more than your average American.
Is it correct that you're in Pennsylvania?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. It seems like a pretty smaller town.
Yeah. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is very small town, like even compared to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Definitely compared to New York City. It's a town. It is technically a city, but it feels much more like a town.
Yeah. How do you find that it's easy or difficult to connect with other people, to collaborate?
Yeah, this is something that I feel most creatives feel like. So I don't think I'm unique in this way, but I just, I've dreamt of what if just all my YouTube friends just lived here and we could just always make stuff together. But, I'd say I do travel for the most part. I have a couple of YouTube friends that live within like an hour vicinity. It's not easy, but also I understand that I probably have it a lot better than some people.
Yeah, I guess like being able to travel is now that we're easing out of COVID a little bit more and travel restrictions are being lifted, I guess it's easier. I kind of really like the idea of having a little home base and then you can travel to meet people and hang out and collaborate.
Yeah, I think like I love New York City. I'm a huge New York City fan, but as a 1 week and then have a place to come home to water and trees and grass and open spaces, Yes. So,
exactly.
I think, and even if I didn't even if I didn't like it, I think at least just seeing the value in doing it this way is extremely beneficial,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The pros and cons of having online friends, I suppose. You have a lot of YouTube friends. I have a lot of Twitch friends, and they're all over the world. I've gotten really close with some people who are in Australia, and they're so far away.
Yeah.
I just want to hang out, but like, it's so expensive.
Right.
Flights out of Australia, flights to Australia.
Right.
It's crazy.
It is. It's pros and cons. You're totally right.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a posting schedule for your YouTube videos?
No, I don't. I would really love to get to the place where I'm doing at least one video a week, but yeah, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think why or why not do you want to have a posting schedule?
I think algorithmically it's better, and I think a part of that is because it's better for your audience too. If they just know like they can expect a new video from you every week. But also my videos are not the type of videos, like they're not so highly produced that it like makes sense for me to have to take weeks on end to make them. I still very much create videos in a daily vlog style. So, it's, quality over quantity is something that I agree with. But I also think that everyone has their own style and only like delivery style, and mine just tends to work better when it feels a little bit less produced, right? So I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. So yeah, I think it's different for everybody. I think there's some people who like one video a month or every 6 weeks or something like makes a lot of sense. But for me, I think the thing that makes the most sense and also makes the most sense for YouTube and the audience, it would be more like once or twice a week.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with having a schedule so that people know, they can expect to see you on their feed on certain days. But I also wouldn't care that much.
Right. I think your true fans are like, no, you do you. Like whatever you got to do, you just do it. But we're all trying to grow, and we're all trying to do the thing that's best for growing whatever respective channel we're growing, right? So in my mind, the thing that would be best would be a video a week. So that's just the target.
Mm-hmm. You almost stopped making videos, right? Right before there was a massive spike in your viewership and subscribers.
Yeah, I didn't. So I didn't almost stop, but I do like to think about what if I would have stopped, And I think that like for me, that's like a very motivating concept. Is you just never know how close you are to breakthrough. And that's something that's so alluring and almost addicting about YouTube or about anything digital on the internet, like creating an online store, a blog, or anything, is like you really have to follow your gut and the feeling you have of like, yeah, but I'm pretty sure I'm onto something. And it's just going to take a little bit for people to also recognize it. So yeah, I think, when I was daily vlogging, I was not going to stop daily vlogging until I hit at least a year. But I do
Oh,
like
yeah.
to think about, it would have been so insane to have quit right before that massive spike happened, and that helps me to keep going now, I think.
Yeah, that is creating things is so weird. When, as you're saying, how you don't know when that breakthrough might happen, and following your gut. A lot of people talk about that, just following their intuition, and it seems to work out for them, and trusting the process, and everything will. It seems like it'll magically work out, which sounds very optimistic, but that is so hard to just let yourself do that. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you need to get real input from trusted people to like make sure that you're not just like delusional. But back to what we were talking about earlier, you also need to limit the amount of people that you're willing to let affect, your life and your outcomes and your production and what you're doing. But yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing it boils down to is trusting myself and knowing that, breakthrough could be coming. The other thing is believing in what I'm doing currently enough that if breakthrough never comes or never came, that it still would be valuable, that it still would be worth it to me. And so that was something that I tried to, and still continuously try to check myself on.
That's also interesting that, we make things if we think it's worth it to do, then we do it. Even though we also want to have an impact on others. And you're saying how you really want to have that one-on-one connection with your audience. And so it's intimate, to have an effect on another person. But I guess first and foremost, we want to have it affect ourselves too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that both and sort of thing. But no, that's very well said, in my opinion. I say, like, something I joke about a lot is like most of my videos are for me. I made them for me. The message is actually for me to remember. It just so happens to also affect a bunch of other people positively who must be in some sort of similar life situation.
Yeah, in a way, I'm like, is this just really selfish?
Yeah, yeah.
Is this good, bad, good? Selfish has such a negative connotation to it.
Right.
Is this okay?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive it is. That it is selfish and it is okay. It's actually more than okay. It's very good.
They can coexist. I think Chris had a question about your background in video and how you got started. Is your educational and work background in video?
Yeah, so I did study film. I really had maybe 2 film production courses in college. One was shooting on 16 millimeter film, and the other one was called digital editing, where I learned on, I think, Final Cut Pro 5, which is much more like Adobe Premiere back then in terms of like the UI. But so I did have training in film. My degree is communication with a concentration in film. But I would say, 95% of what I draw on and like kind of utilize is came after college. I had the video production company. We're shooting on completely different tech than we learned on in college, and then really shooting for a completely different medium than we were even learning about in college. We weren't like social media wasn't a market way. You couldn't market through social media video, and that was our main target when we started our company. And then when I got onto YouTube, again, that was another jump of like learning what is it like to build a brand on this platform, and how do you fit into this community and all that sort of stuff. Like that was all sort of learned on the fly. So yeah, formal training, yes, but the majority of what I actually use is just like anybody. We learned on YouTube.
Yeah. Do you think that YouTube will stick around for a while? Or do you think that there might be some sort of shift in the near future where, this is kind of just gone? And if YouTube is gone, that's kind of your job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think of all the social media platforms, I think that YouTube has the least social media feel of all of them. Like, you could even say like maybe YouTube isn't social media. It's some other thing, right? It feels a little bit like something else. And I think that's just because of the evergreen potential of a YouTube video, that it can continue to get served for years and years. Whereas like when you post something on your Instagram story, it literally stops showing after 24 hours. I know that there's reels, but even reels, like they tend to have like a lifetime, and then they don't get many views. TikToks are a little bit different now, where some of it is like starting to come back up in search. Like even some of my very old TikToks are getting views now. But yeah, YouTube still has like the lock on kind of long form video. So I personally don't think YouTube is going anywhere. And I think that if anything, it will become more and more integral to kind of search and SEO and web results. And like, I think we're kind of at the beginning of how integrated video will become from YouTube on the internet and in search. But yeah, if it were to disappear, which it totally could, I hope that my email list would suffice. I hope that my other platforms, people would come and find me there if they still wanted to see my stuff. And I don't think that, like, even if it's not YouTube, I think there's gonna need to be a place for long form, slightly slower, creator made, individual made video. I think that what YouTube has become sort of integral to how a big part of the world communicates. And so even if it's not YouTube, I think some other platform, be it TikTok or something else, if TikTok gets banned, I think there'll be something to fill its place.
Yeah, probably. I mean, YouTube has become such a integral is a good word, I think, to use. It's also very full circle, where you gain all these skills from YouTube and now you're posting onto YouTube.
Yep. Yeah. And it just keeps feeding itself like that, which is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that it's maybe a little bit saturated now with all of these social media platforms and everything that you're trying to, it's a little bit hard to get your voice heard, maybe?
I think that there's always a place for new voices on any platform, because for numerous reasons, but just because technology moves so fast, because of like the news, because culture is changing, the world's changing. I think there's room for new voices. And then there's also this whole, like, there's value in learning something from someone who just learned it a month ago, or who is currently learning it now, as opposed to someone who learned it 2 years ago and is trying to teach you from what they know 2 years ago, again, because of how fast it's all moving. So I think it's more saturated than it ever was, but I think it's still blue ocean. I think there's still plenty of room. And the reason I say that is because, like, I feel like every day I find a new channel with 53,000 subscribers that I've never heard of. That's like in the camera space. I'm like,
True.
How is that even possible? I had that I wouldn't have. And they're just, I think there really is just, there's more than enough people who are gonna resonate with your voice as over someone else's voice and delivery style. I don't think that there's really competition. I think it's more, you make stuff, your people find you, and then you keep growing it from there.
For as much of a competitive guy as you are, it's a different, not so competitive in this space.
Right. It's more competitive collaboration. It's like, I use competition as a way to kind of fuel me in like a fun way.
Yeah, seeing them go up is great. And I suppose for you, with your subscriber count now, you can't really see it fluctuating that much, I would assume. For YouTube subscribers, it's probably pretty constant. Maybe the viewer viewership is what changes most.
Yeah, I mean, no, you still see subscribers go up and down. I mean, I still see subscribers go up and down on my channel. But I mean, it's not massive swings. It's swings in tens, you know. But also my channel isn't growing nearly as fast as it used to. So, 10 people is like a lot of people. I'm like, oh, where are these 10 people going, you know? But yeah, views, the way that YouTube ranks your videos 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 10 out of 10, all that stuff. So the numbers are always there tempting you to look at them.
Yeah. How do you keep a positive mindset and not let that bother you?
Yeah. I think like for me, I always try to think of what is going to help me deliver the best results for myself. Like, what do I want, right? Like, first I think like, what do I want? Obviously, I want the numbers going up. I want to make videos that resonate with people, that a lot of people see. Okay, if that's what I want, what are the things that I can focus on to help me get what I want? And, I have been in numerous situations where I get bad news, I start thinking about that, and then it makes me do a terrible job of like whatever I'm actually trying to do that day. It derails me, right? So for me, focusing on the stats as anything more than just like a glance and like, oh, that's interesting, isn't helpful. Trying to not give them any sort of weight over like my emotional state. I just know that is going to help me do a better job of achieving the results that I want to achieve. So yeah, it's kind of a non-answer because like, how do you not let it affect you? It's like, well, I just don't let it affect me. That doesn't really count.
But you have a good point where you don't let it get emotional. If you have an emotional attachment to it, that's when it affects you.
Right.
But just peeping at it and taking note of it is I think that's a good point.
Yeah. I try to think of the numbers as tools and as a guide to help direct me in a way to help me get the results that I want to get. So almost like a little litmus test to be like, oh, this is resonating. Oh, that's not resonating. But like the great thing about YouTube Studio is you can always just go and look at your most viewed videos in the last 28 days. Like which videos brought in the most views. And you can always just make a new version of one of those videos. Like there's always something positive to draw out of the numbers. Even if everything looks terrible, you can always find something that's like, oh, if this video made me lose subscribers, this video made me lose the most amount of subscribers that I ever, lost. What would it look like to do the opposite of that video? Like there's always stuff to draw out of the numbers that can be beneficial. So that's the stuff I try to focus on.
Interesting. Because when you said that you can always make, you can make more, you can change the way that you do things. It's kind of like I've been thinking about the first couple of I know I already said like the first couple of podcast episodes, but for music, my first EP that I put out, the mix on that is terrible.
Yeah.
And I hate it when I listen to it. But that's just indicative of me and my skill level at that time.
Right.
And the songs that I wrote at that time, it's not indicative of me, as a person, as a whole. It changes, right?
Yep.
I can do so much better now. So I might as well just make more and put more out now with what I have now, and it just keeps progressing, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything's just a stepping stone. The time frame, the game is very long. I think so much we are just short-sighted. Like we will never arrive. Like the game is just so long. And I think it's easy to get caught up in like, well, this should have been better and I should have been better by. It's like, no, none of that matters. Like we got 40 years to make stuff. These are all just little scrimmages in the actual game.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you got to zoom out and see it that way.
Yeah.
Which is hard because sometimes we get so focused on the tiny little details of everything. Would you say that YouTube is the main social media for you that you are putting all your time and effort into, and then everything else might just lead to YouTube, whatever you post on other platforms?
I'd say YouTube is my main revenue driver and my biggest focus in terms of I need to make content. This is where I'm putting the content. It's going to be on YouTube, right? But in terms of social media that I feel like I spend the most time on, that's probably Twitter. And that's just like talking to people, your friends all around the world that you talk to. But yeah, in terms of like the place where I see it makes the most sense to apply effort in terms of creating stuff is on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I realize like YouTube comments, or how do you engage with your community? Because I feel like it's so much easier doing it through live streaming because you have that immediate interaction.
You can like talk right then. Yeah.
Yeah. But with YouTube, it's just comments that people leave and that you can respond to. Is there more, or is that kind of what you do?
Yeah, for me, that's pretty much it. And then, a lot of the people who watch my YouTube videos also are on Twitter and we can have conversations there. And we do, you know? But yeah, responding to comments, liking comments, every once in a while, something cool comes from a comment and you can create a whole new video off of that and reference the comment. But yeah, responding and then taking the conversation over to Twitter. I feel like Twitter is where YouTubers go to have conversations with other YouTubers. Yeah,
I see that a lot. But also, I've been seeing a lot of just everybody's just hating on Twitter right now.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Fong had a question that was working/collaborating with individuals and small brands or big brands. Any preferences and why?
Always fun to collaborate with brands because you get paid. That's super fun. But yeah, I mean, I think making videos with other people when you can either go to be with them or they come to be with you and you get to feed off of each other's energy. Like, I just did a video with my wife, Amber, and, we got to spend like 2 hours recording it together and just, again, laughing, feeding off of each other's energy. It's just so fun. Collaborating with people is so fun. And it really brings out a different side of me, and I think a different side of all creators to see them interact with other people. So yeah, that'd be my choice.
Actually, speaking about interacting with others, DJ again had a question that was, how do you frame yourself in levels of introversion and extroversion in your personality and energy?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I have always considered myself an extrovert until I started YouTube, and then I became much more introverted in terms of like just needing time alone to recharge after I spend time in groups or with other people.
Right.
Yeah, I'm definitely a weird mixture of both, like a bit of an ambivert, but I am definitely very outgoing. So like when I'm in a group, I will feel very extroverted to people when I'm in a group because I'm I love to just rile people up and have fun, and just I love that feeling regardless of, it might be draining all of my energy out of me, but like it's a great way to drain energy. It's like it's a fun energy drain. But yeah, I think I'm much more introverted than I've ever been, but I am probably, if I had to pick one, I'd probably be an extrovert.
Yeah, I think that with collaborations and stuff, I guess I am super introverted, and collaborating, I haven't done too many in-person collaborations, but I've been doing some online. And again, with like friends in Australia and stuff. So it's, I think through that process of collaboration, it feels comfortable for me because we do things asynchronously, and I get to spend time honing my own ideas and then presenting them and such.
That's cool.
But I'm afraid of of in-person collaborations a little bit, especially just I'm always worried about like what am I supposed to say and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily how that's supposed to be. Like you don't necessarily think about, there's no script, right?
Right.
But yeah, so collaborations are interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been a part of collaborations where it's like conversation doesn't come super naturally. So you're like, you can start to feel like, oh, is this going okay? Like, what am I supposed to say? That sort of stuff. But trying to like recenter in those times and be like, I am who I am. I don't need to say anything. This is not my responsibility to make this go well. Like we're just people. Everyone's here just trying to have a good time, make something. Everyone has different motivations. Like trying to just remember the bigger picture there is super crucial. But I think they're still definitely worth it. I think they're worth giving it a shot. Yeah. Even if you're almost especially if you feel like, well, but what if it's awkward? It's like, yeah, that's like where the best stuff comes from. The most growth, the craziest connections, all that sort of stuff is when you take action in the face of awkwardness or fear. I love that stuff. That's like, I live for that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you go about your video collaborations with people? How does that work out?
I mean, every which way. I mean, sometimes people reach out and they're like, hey, I'm going to be in New York City. Are you going to be there? I'm like, yeah, I could come up. Or, sometimes it's more formal where it's like, okay, we're going to this place. We're making this video or coming to visit somebody. So yeah, really every which way. But I mean, it's interesting because everybody has a different understanding. For instance, when I was daily vlogging, for me, I was like, yeah, the camera's I'm going to have my camera. We're going to be recording. Like that's what's happening. But not everybody records their whole life all the time. So there's like more boundaries, So trying to like get everybody comfortable with, okay. And so like, are we making the videos now or are we still in just the hangout time? And I'm one of those people who just likes to be very open about any of that stuff. So I'll just talk about it. I'll be like, okay, so are we making a video now or do you want to just hang out for like 4 hours and then we'll make a video later? What are you feeling? And just breaking the ice like that and trying to ease some of that tension, I think has been helpful with some of them. But yeah, really every which way. I've made collabs. I feel like no two collaborations are ever the same.
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, that's amazing. It's nice when there's somebody there to break the tension and to just make things clear, like what is going on,
expectations,
what is happening. Yeah. How do you balance then with vlogging and stuff? How do you go about, deciding whether or not to pull out your camera and record? Because it is kind of awkward, especially with a bigger setup.
Yeah.
And not just your phone.
It's gotten, even just my phone now, it's gotten much harder for me to know like when it's okay to record versus when it's not. And honestly, now I normally like lean toward the side of like people would rather me not record them. If I'm going to record them, it's like it's a bit of a disservice to whatever's going on.
Right.
Because like just for whatever reason, like the majority of people don't like to see themselves on camera. They're afraid they're going to look stupid or sound stupid or whatever. And I get that. I understand all of that. And I just don't ever want to make somebody feel uncomfortable. So it is like a breath of fresh air when you're just around another creator and they've got their camera and they're recording stuff. And, I come up to them, I'm like, just so you know, literally anything that happens for the next 24 hours, you can get it on camera. And they're like, oh, me too. Like, yeah, whatever you want to shoot, because there's this freedom of we're in this together. We're making videos. We kind of have this unspoken, unwritten understanding of we're making a video And
Yeah.
that's just super freeing. But yeah, like even, I'm really into pickleball right now. And I just put on my camera the other day to take a video of some people playing a match. And then it wasn't until like 4 or 5 hours later that I realized, oh no, like I wonder if I made any of them uncomfortable by recording their pickleball match, because for me, it's just second nature. I just want to record everything. I want to record my whole life. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I default to don't record, but I love it when anything goes.
Yeah. Or like, do you ever just record sneakily and then ask people maybe afterwards?
I don't. And that might be because I come from the video production background of having the production company and like knowing the legality of sneakily recording people. But like I have a lot of quote unquote respect for people who do that. But yeah, it's not something that I've ever been able to pull off.
Yeah, no, I just was thinking about this one time I was jamming with a friend, and well, we started with he made some arrangements for us, and then we were playing it through, and I was like, hey, can I record this? Because it sounds kind of cool. But then as soon as I set my phone up, we got so stiff, and it was no longer, it wasn't as natural, right?
Yep.
And then we proceeded to start jamming, and jamming is just such a magical thing as well, where it's a collaborative thing too, where you're both just improvising and then you're communicating in the music. Like you're not actually giving each other vocal visual cues or anything. And one person might play something really cool and then the other person might echo it. They'll figure it out and echo it, and then you go somewhere else with it, and you kind of fall into the same similar patterns and stuff. And it's really fun. And so like I just started recording on my phone, but he didn't know. And that was when it was the most natural.
Yep.
And having that moment captured was great. He was okay with having it captured, of course.
Yeah.
And putting it out there. But yeah, sometimes if you ask first, it makes it changes the vibe. But of course, with all the rights and legalities and everything, like, of course, it depends on the situation.
Right. What's interesting is most people would like the results better if they didn't know that they were being recorded, because they would come across naturally.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not true. Maybe some people, again, don't like the way they come across naturally. And like, okay, is what it is. But whenever that sort of like freeze up moment happens when someone sees a camera, that's a bummer. And so it was and is I think it's an art form to be able to try to overcome that and get someone relaxed and natural again, so that you can capture like a real interaction, like real emotions and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So to wrap this up, Fong had some questions of, what tools do you use on a daily basis to focus / keep track of your tasks?
So I use Google Calendar, and that is equipped with reminders and events. So I'm very reliant on that. Like if it's not in the calendar, I won't, there's a 1% chance that I'll remember to do it. My calendar events have 3 reminder alarms that go off on my watch and my phone for 30 minutes, 10 minutes, and 2 minutes before each event. That's probably the main one. Then I use a app called Divergent, which is like a 30-minute timer countdown with somebody where you both name your intentions, and then you, in the 30 minutes as the timer's counting down, you do whatever the thing is that you said you were going to do in the next 30 minutes. That's pretty sick. That's one of them that I use. And then is there another? I think that might be, I've dabbled a little bit in a different one that's a little bit more formal version of that, called Cave Day, which is like a video chat where you name an intention and then you do that thing, but that takes an hour. So that's a little bit more intense. But yeah, so alarms, Google Calendar, events and reminders, and Divergent are my main productivity digital apps.
Nice. I'll check them out.
All right.
Yeah. I realized that I really love productivity videos.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel productive too.
Awesome.
Yeah. Which item of gear did you purchase that was not really necessary?
Unnecessary piece of gear. I have been very honored to like been given a lot of my gear. So the last time I had to buy something. So what happens is like when I buy something, it's because I really actually need that thing. But actually you can't see it, but it's the Mantis Pod is a very cool kind of like tripod, vlog pod, tabletop pod thing. And I was like, I'm definitely going to use it. But it ended up having like a higher center of gravity than I really feel comfortable with. So I ended up going back to my all-time favorite, which it's just more of like a more traditional tabletop tripod. So that was like $100. So that was something that I am using it right now, but I rarely use that. And probably not the best use of my money.
I just Googled it really quickly to see what it looks like.
The Mantis Pod. Yeah, it looks cool and it has a lot of cool functionality, but just in practice, I don't end up using it.
All right. Well, one last question because this is called Making It.
Yeah.
What does making it mean to you?
Making it. I think making it, a lot of different facets, obviously, but in your day-to-day, I think making it is deciding that you're not going to have any 0 days, deciding that you're going to get something done today. And whether that's you created something, whether you got through the slog of all of the boring, mundane stuff that you had to do, that's just like business, whether you posted a video, whether you edited a video, like making it day in and day out, making, one thing, I think is such a fantastic way to live. And the cumulative effect of that is, is success, right? Is like, if you can commit to that every day, that's success. I think that making it in your personal life and your social life has to do with focusing on relationships that are life-giving, where you feel like you can, you can be kind of self-sacrificial for people you love, and you're surrounding yourself with people who are self-sacrificial who love you and are willing to stand up for you and have conversations with you. I think that's what it means to make it there. And then making it in your career, making it in kind of the job, the business world. I think for me, it looks like time freedom, having enough money and enough prospective work and enough kind of interesting outlet things that are making money that I am able to do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. I think that when I get to the point where that's on lock, like that's on autopilot, I'll feel like that's making it, But I think the most important of all of those is that day to day, no 0 days, and making the commitment to make something every day.
I like how you took it out of just the job and career perspective as well, and you applied it to your personal life. That's great. Yeah, good answer. Thanks.
Important, very crucial. Probably more important than the other ones. But then the career one. Really, the career one, it just is what it is. Like those can change. That can change all the time. You can always change your career, but the personal life and the kind of commitment to passion and creativity, I think those are way more important.
All right. So where can people find you on the internet? Mostly
Twitter. That's the main place that I hang out. That's at Cody Warner. And then also on YouTube at R Cody Warner. There's an R in there, but you could just search.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, there's an R because I've tried to get it, when we got the handle thing, I tried to get it again, but there's another at Cody Warner. He's got a channel. He's not a small creator. There's no such thing as small creator, but he's got a channel which is like, he uses it like I used it when I started, like an archive.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so YouTube and Twitter.
Awesome. I will link everything down below. Thank you so much for this conversation, hopping on here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.